welcome to today's video. And you join me today out in the Zafira Tourer, and we're basically having a little test drive, real life test drive as they like to call it. So we've actually got to drop off a couple of video recorders to a friend of mine. If you're interested, if you're watching from the other videos that I do on this channel, video recorders are a Ferguson 3V31. It's actually branded as a multi-broadcast, so an ex-rental with the model number 8941, so it's a Thorn 8941. And for the Betamax aficionados, I've also got a Sanyo VTC 5000, which was apparently the most popular and most sold video recorder in the United Kingdom during the periods of 1983 and 1984. So, back to the Zaf. At the moment we are cold, so we've only just started, so we tend to sort of just take things a little bit easy with the gears, because obviously the gearbox oil is not warmed up yet, and easy on the throttle. We don't need to really use the turbocharger at all for any sort of part of this journey. We can just gently use the base engine torque to get us up to the legal limit, which on this stretch of road happens to be 40 miles an hour. A couple of nice features about the Zafira Tourer, also known as the Zafira C. The interior, all of the touch points are a nice quality plastic. Plastics do get a little sharper the further down the interior you go, but that is very common with a lot of cars these days. Another nice feature, which I haven't seen on many other cars apart from sort of quite more expensive choices such as the Volvo XC90, is this. So I don't know if you can see this, but going around the doors is a piece of plastic. And that piece of plastic basically goes from the top of the A pillar here all the way round to the B pillar, and it's all nice. Mark II, and it's the same story on the rear doors as well, and it's just a nice little touch which basically covers up the what would have been otherwise exposed yet painted metal. Just makes the interior just that little bit more classy. So this particular version's got an electronic parking brake, and I've also got this rather cool centre console stack with the two cup holders and sliding armrest, which is quite nice. And also got cruise control, climate control, all round electric windows, and part leather seats. I'm not sure if the leather is real or if it's synthetic, but it is a nice place to be. And it's also got quite a nice touch on the stitching, so you've got sort of like a grey stitching and a yellow stitching finish, which is quite nice actually, and something that you wouldn't expect on a car of this class. It really sort of shows over the Zafira B just sort of how much more upmarket Opel really wanted to go with the Zafira C. So we're actually coming up to a motorway junction, which will give us a nice opportunity to test out the acceleration. We're not doing a full-on, full-bore, hardcore acceleration, but just enough acceleration to get us onto the motorway safely, smoothly, and above all efficiently, which is not something I would do in my XJ40, because that's not particularly efficient and does encourage you to drive like a bit of an idiot sometimes, you know, with full throttle acceleration and other fun things of that sort of nature. So we're coming up to the motorway and the national speed limit. I'm in 4th gear at the moment. That's P38 now, P38A. We're actually accelerating gently. I put my foot down. 70 miles an hour, and 5th and 6th. Just drop back down to 60. So instantaneous fuel consumption is at the moment 60-ish, or between 60 and 70 miles to the gallon, sat at 60 miles an hour. I have cruise control should I want to use it, and I also have Bluetooth phone preparation as well, which syncs all of the contacts from whichever phone I'm connected to. You can have a number of phones connected, which is quite useful if you have multiple drivers of this particular vehicle. But in my case, because I'm the only person in the family that drives, well, between my wife and myself, or my wife and I, work phone and personal mobile. Most of the time it's hooked up to my work phone because that's the one I tend to leave Bluetooth turned on. So, rather enormous stretch of motorway at the moment, which will give us a quick rundown, or give us a quick opportunity to go through some of the features which I like. One of the things that I like is, you might not be able to see it, in the centre console you have a cigar lighter / 12 volt outlet. You have a 3.5mm audio jack aux in. You also have a USB port. Now the USB port will sync up with whatever device you're connected to. If you have an iPhone, it will actually allow you to use the iPhone and use the iPhone like an iPod, so you'll be able to play back any audio files that you may sort of have stored on that particular device. The in-car entertainment is pretty good, to be honest, not bad at all. It has, unusually for these days, a built-in CD slot, so you can either play traditional compact discs or discs which have a selection of MP3 files burnt to them. So you really do have quite a bit of flexibility as to sort of what music and what entertainment you listen to in the vehicle. You've got traditional FM stereo. There's also AM wave bands as well. But the big feature is its DAB, so you can actually pick up digital audio broadcasts, which is very, very handy. For example, I tend to listen quite extensively to Radio 4 Extra, mainly because it plays a lot of the old shows which I like, so that's quite entertaining. We've got dual zone climate control, which is from, I think, the SE grade up. This one's an SE. The one above this would be the Elite, if I recall. And somewhere in between you got the Tech line, which has sat-nav and a few other things. One of the big features, obviously, is this storage unit adjustment thing, and also in the rear, the flex seating. So the seats will actually fold flat, as you would expect, but you can actually fold the centre seat and turn it into sort of like either an armrest or a picnic table, which is quite handy if you've got two people in the back of the car. However, because I have 3 children, I very rarely get to use that option. And also I've got a seat cover on the rear seat to sort of capture any of the traditional childlike mess, let's say, that gets generated, such as errant bits of chocolate, crisps, sandwich, and anything else that they may decide to bring into the car. Over on this side, you might not be able to see this, but over on this side we've got 2 glove box storage units. We've got this one here, which is quite deep, goes all the way back down into the bulkhead area, and we've got a lower one here, not so deep, but again a nice useful little thing to have, with a built-in coin holder. It's also got this on both boxes, it's got a flock material, which is sort of quite nice to the touch. So certainly for this generation, Vauxhall / Opel have really concentrated on sort of the main touch points of these leather-rimmed wheel, the nice sort of stitching you've got on the wheel, the nice stitching on the seats, the stitching on the armrest, just little touches like that sort of make you think that you are sat in sort of a premium environment. I mean, it's not really a premium car. It is what it is. It's a dependable, comfortable, nice people carrier. And certainly in this day and age, the people carrier is one of those genres of vehicle which isn't really a thing anymore. People have moved on to SUVs with multiple numbers of seats and other sort of vehicles such as that sort of nature. So the venerable MPV, people carrier, isn't really a thing anymore. I think until Vauxhall axed, or Opel axed the Zafira Tourer, it was certainly between Opel and Ford. So Ford have got the S-Max, which is effectively what this is competing against, and obviously Opel had the Zafira Tourer. So that's enough of me talking for a bit. What I'm going to do is we will pick up this conversation when we get onto some more interesting and challenging roads, let's say. We can actually sort of see how the vehicle copes with those sort of conditions. So you join me back at some more sort of residential streets, and I can run you through some of the criticisms that I have of the vehicle. So it has the 17-inch wheels. If I went for the 18s or the 19s, the effects that I'm feeling would probably be worse. It's very smooth on the motorway, but little sort of undulations in the road can upset it slightly, as in sort of the ride can become a bit choppy. It's by no means terribly uncomfortable though, to be honest with you, and it can be improved by lowering the tyre pressures slightly. At the moment I'm running it with the sort of in between the two figures that the manual recommends. So the manual recommends a certain value for comfort and also a certain value for economy. So I'm running it on slightly between those two so that I still have a certain degree of comfort but also a certain degree of economy as well. But on really sort of undulating surfaces like this, it doesn't become sort of uncontrolled, but it is a little bit sort of bouncier than you would like. However, it is sort of tightly damped and quite tightly sprung, and certainly does sort of have quite a flair for handling should you really sort of want to push it through its paces. When you do come to the limits, you will find that it will sort of err towards understeer rather than oversteer. One criticism I certainly had with the Zafira B was under heavy emergency braking you would get a very light back end. It would almost feel like the back end was sort of shimmying from side to side slightly under heavy emergency braking. Now on the Zafira B they have a twist beam axle. The Zafira Tourer or Zafira C does still have a similar design axle, but it's located by a Watts linkage, and the Watts linkage does seem to dial out a certain amount of that sort of side-by-side motion that you would sort of tend to get under very heavy braking. Similarly on the K11 Micra, which is obviously a much smaller car, but you don't really sort of get that side-by-side effect on the K11 Micra. Mainly because you've got a panhard rod tying the rear axle to the body to sort of dial out some of those lateral forces. So even though we don't have a fully independent setup at the rear, you could call it semi-independent because the beam does sort of have a certain degree of twist. There is a certain amount of sort of lateral location which really sort of does tie things in from a road holding perspective. It just makes the car far more predictable. The one criticism I had about the Zafira B was that if you were sort of pressing on and if you sort of lifted off, you did, as you would expect on a front-wheel drive car, you did get sort of quite a light back end, which if you lifted off mid-corner could actually upset you into a small amount of lift-off oversteer, which could be quite interesting in the right circumstances, but when you're really just sort of going from A to B and pottering around town and doing a bit of motorway work, a little too much excitement, let's say, especially in a vehicle that's supposed to carry your family and other items in a sort of relative degree of safety and comfort. So the engine in this particular Zafira is the 2-litre diesel. I think that's 1956 cc, if I'm not wrong. It's a diesel that's shared with a number of other manufacturers. It originates from the Fiat group, and you do see it in the Fiat products of the time, notably the Alpha 159 and other vehicles of that sort of nature. Fiat Chroma, no, that was 1.9. Fiat Bravo, whatever they called it. Yeah, certainly other Fiats of that sort of nature, of that sort of generation, do have this engine. This one is the slightly older incarnation, so the Euro 5 as opposed to the Euro 6, and it has a 165 brake horsepower and 245 pound-foot of torque output. It's mated to GM's F40 6-speed transmission, which, if you get it just right, like that, you can have a change where there is almost perceptibly no sort of feeling of the change in the cabin whatsoever. The clutch is light, has a nice biting point, it's about midway up the travel. It is a dual mass flywheel on this one, but since the last generation of diesels, they seem to have sorted out the act as regards dual mass flywheels and premature wear of said item. And this one is now at 43,000 miles, and there's no discernible vibration through the clutch pedal or into the cabin of a dual mass flywheel that's going bad. So let's touch wood that long may that remain the case. I think the trick is to not dump the clutch, because it is, you know, the flywheel does sort of take out a lot of the feeling, but to just gradually feed the clutch in and out, as you would with an older system. So shortly we're going to be coming up to some nice sort of twistier parts of the road, and we'll be able to just open it out a little bit, and we'll see how it handles on some more sort of challenging roads. So we're now at a national speed limit, and the one thing we find is fourth gear very quickly takes us up to the national speed limit. There's really no need to change down to third, because you've got all of those reserves of torque, especially on this diesel version, which will sort of very easily carry you up to the national limit. So we're coming up to a bend now that is a 40-mile-an-hour bend, and we're going to be actually coming into it at an indicated 50, but we can gently squeeze through very nicely, very smoothly indeed. There's good communication feedback through the wheel. You can sort of tell exactly what's going on underfoot. The car is firm and planted, and really it's just quite a nice thing to drive if you want to have a little bit of fun, if you want to you know, sort of explore the limits, so to speak. Certainly on roads like this, due to its size, you can't really throw it around too much, because it is a big car. It's, you know, it's quite a sizable thing. It's about as wide, possibly sort of the widest point, which would be sort of the tips of the mirrors. It's probably about as wide as my XJ40, and that's a big car. That's a wide car. It's not as long, but you know, that width does sort of make you feel a sort of a little bit more vulnerable on roads like this, where you might have to sort of suddenly pull in, or you know, sort of suddenly pull over just to sort of let something larger past. There we go. Certainly for conditions like this, you can sort of cover quite a lot of ground fairly quickly. And really, you don't really need to use any other gears other than third and fourth, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. It's certainly more than capable. So now this is an interesting bit. There we are. So that was over a slight undulation there, which I purposely wanted to upset the car on, and it remains sort of straight and true. So it really is, sort of handling wise, it's quite safe as well. So if you do, you know, sort of opt to be a little bit silly, you will find that it won't let go immediately or sort of throw you into the hedge. It will actually sort of guide you around. Stability systems, I think we've got traction control and ABS. I'm not sure if we have any stability control or anything of that nature. The traction control really just is sort of an on-off scenario. You really need to turn it off though, to be honest, because it does give you enough slippage at the front wheels. If you are starting, say, in snow and you just need a little bit of extra slip to get you going. During the winter I tend to run on season-specific tyres. So I do tend to run winter tyres during the winter, and Nexans during the summer, which are obviously rated for the car, the load, and all the other bits and pieces that they need to be rated for. So here's a good example of a corner. Can't really go faster than 40 around this, but around we go. No understeer whatsoever, goes around really nicely. You could probably take that a little bit quicker, but with the road conditions as they are, a little bit damp at the moment, you don't really want to be throwing it around too much. So the roads are sort of pretty greasy at the minute, to be honest with you. It's not exactly treacherous weather, but it's that sort of condition that you need to be a little bit careful of. And into fourth again, which was probably the wrong gear for that, but round we go, and we've got another little switch back here, which takes us round. Ooh, bit of understeer, and there we go. So you can actually, as you saw there, a little bit of understeer, you can actually correct it by just gently lifting off, which just brings things nicely back into shape. But national speed limit road, we're not doing any faster than 40, so you can have a lot of fun at lower speeds if you pick the right road. If this was a drier day, you could probably increase those speeds by a couple of miles an hour, but you know, I'm not exactly a young person anymore. All of that sort of trying to drive as fast as I can on tight roads is really behind me these days, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depends on your outlook. So just into fourth for this bit. There we go, nicely around. And now we're going to be coming into third. Easy does it. Oop, there we are. And there we go, nicely done. There we are, 40 miles an hour now. I don't know why I'm congratulating myself on driving around a corner when people in front of me are doing exactly the same thing with no trouble at all. Just for the benefit of the video, I guess. Right, junction now, so we'll be able to see a little bit of burst of acceleration. So coming into the junction, ooh, a little wheel spin, and 60. There we go. The one thing that you find is certainly with the diesel, you don't need to rev it any higher than 3,500 RPM if you want to make progress. So really, 3,500 RPM, change up to the next gear, that's all you really need. You don't really need to go any harder or any faster than that, because it will very quickly get you up to whatever the speed limit is on the road that you happen to be on, and it will do so safely and comfortably. So another junction now. Downhill stretch on this one, and 60 again. So you can really, if you push it hard, it can, not even that hard, if you do sort of want to push it a little bit, it will very quickly get you to the limit and allow you to keep up very easily with traffic. However, if you just want to potter along and drive a little bit more gently, we can do that as well. So we'll just wait for this mocker to escape from in front of us. There we are. And gently does it. Second gear. Third. Fourth. Fifth. The F40 transmission used in this is a much more reliable transmission than I think it was the N32 that they used in previous generation 6-speed Zafiras. The F40 is actually a much bigger transmission, which is probably why it can be used in this particular application, as the previous Zafira was based more on the Astra, whereas this Zafira Although you could say it is strictly based on the Astra, the actual front end setup comes from the class above, it actually comes from the Insignia. So that's probably a sort of accounts as to why the car is so wide, because it does have elements of the Epsilon platform, or the Epsilon 2 platform, within its sort of basic DNA. And there we are, and 60 in sec, and we're returning a nice, comfortable 57-ish, between 40 and 50 miles to the gallon. Anyway, that's been a real world test drive of my Vauxhall Zafira Tourer. If you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you want me to try and do more test drives of this nature, feel free to let me know in the comments. But don't forget to like, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.